Hey everybody, welcome to episode 4 of how to make a turn-based RPG in Project Spark. I have not done anything since making the last video. We will start right where we left off. So what we did last time was we created different players that have different positions, and the positions were assigned within variables here in their brains, which will be chosen by the player in-game. Then based on what their position was, it is a numeric variable. You'll see here spot 3, so this guy would go here. This is spot 2 and 1. Then the battlefield center would then send the player to its designated spot. Now what we need to do is we need to do the same thing for the enemies, but we need to assign their numbers based on when they were created. So right now we don't have monsters being created, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Properties, brain, template, true. So we're going to create this brain. This is going to be our we're going to make this a template. Actually, we're not going to make this a template for now. We'll do that later though. So this is going to be our monster generator. Let's just call it monsters, so I don't want to get made fun of for spelling things wrong. Let's see. So monsters. What's going to happen is this. We're going to say let's see, once. We're going to need to create a few numbers. We're going to call page. Silly controller, you're plugged in. We're going to call page values, and we're going to say how many monsters we need is monsters to create equals a random number from 1 to 3 as integer. We don't need half a monster, so monsters to create values. Then we're going to have a for each of loop. For each of basically just runs a line of whatever code is child to this, it will run based on whatever comes after that. So in this case, for each of monsters to create. So every time we go through this, we are going to create. I'm tired of seeing that name. Monster. For each of monsters to create monster. Okay? Well, if you look in this monster brain, we're going to run into some issues because my spot equals enemy position 1. What is enemy position 1? Oops. Enemy position 1 is that cube right there in front of it. You'll see him pointing to it. See that? They're communicating. That is his position. Okay? There's nothing in there. This is his position right here. So what we want to do is we want to create a system similar to what we did for the players. And how we did that was this. For each of players spots, blah, 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 blah. What we need to do is for each of, and we'll probably actually put these in different cubes, but this is for each of enemies. Okay, for each of enemies, and we'll make a new one called, a new object set called enemy spots. Okay. For each of enemies, enemy spots. Now we need to go in here, and we need to do the same thing we did over here, where we said spot equals 1 and then the player spots. But what we're going to do is battlefield center enemy spots, and this is spot equals 1. We're going to copy this page, and we're going to paste it, and we're going to call this spot 2, and we're going to paste it, and we're going to call this spot 3. Now this is a little redundant. We have this line of code written in all of these, so we could do that a different way, but some things we're just going to leave them like that just for the sake of simplicity. There's only 3 of them, so if we need to make a change later, it's not that big of a deal. If we decide to make a large change, we will do it differently. So this is a lot of code that's running for like no reason, and there's probably a more efficient way to write it, but we're going to leave it this way for the time being. So let's just see what happens here. Let's see. In here, we actually, I'm going to show you this. We assigned player 1, spot 3, spot 1, and spot 2. But we need to give these monsters a spot, okay? So, let's see. Create monster. When created objects increased, whatever it increased by, let's see, monster equals it. So when objects increased, monster equals it. Monster spot, spot equal to current index. So the monster spot will equal to current index, okay? For each of monsters to create monster, blah, 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 blah. When created objects count is equal to monsters to create, what do? Destroy. We're going to destroy that. Let's just see what happens. We're probably going to run into some issues. Alright, cool. So it created 2. Let's see how they function. Again, we have these 2 players. I went over that in the last video. They're both going at the same time. Hey, you know what? We have this working. That's pretty sweet. But what we don't want is we don't want them to be so far away. So let's do this. Let's create a, let's say we're way over here. Let's put this way over here. We're going to put this here, and this will be called monster start position. Okay, this will be called the monster start position, and create monster at position, monster start position. Position. Okay, so at that position. So, I didn't like that he was strafing. I thought that was a little goofy. So in here, we will say, let's see, this combat brain should be pushed into it right away. And he's supposed to turn toward his enemy, but his enemy has not been declared yet. So in here, we're going to say my enemy equals enemy's nearest object. Now when we create these, we'll see what happens. Yay, we created 2 goblins. Let's restart. We're going to restart a couple times. We're going to make sure we're not just getting stuck on 2. Yay! Sweet! Cool. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to make these monsters a little bit different. So there's going to be there's basically going to be a random number system that allocates their speed. So let's do this. Let's do speed equals random random number to, let's say, 0.95. So these can never be as fast as the player. So these will never be as fast as the player, but they can be pretty darn slow. So let's do this now. Let's say display speed above. So it'll display their speed. So these monsters will have a little bit of variety. I mean, these monsters, like in our game, are not created out of some sort of a crazy monster generator. These monsters are they're monsters. They're in the wild, so they're going to have random numbers, right? So now their speed is going to be based on that. Now, I have run into this before. The monster stops functioning, and I'm not really sure why. I think it has to do with this AI that we have. Option equals random number 1 to 2. Oh, you know what? When page entered, because I don't, well, I still feel like I'm gonna push brain attack function. I gotta figure out what brain the player is in the goblin when that's happening, but that's something that we'll deal with in a little bit. But right now we've got this figured out. This is the monster start position. This is where the monsters spawn, yeah. So I think that's gonna be it for this video. That was a shorter one, but that was getting us to create these monsters, and we got what we needed. So in the next video, I think we're going to go ahead and do random encounters, and then how to move us to the battlefield and initiate combat. I think that'll be a good one to work on. So anyway, thanks so much for hanging out, and we'll see you in episode 5.